This talk focuses on rethinking the progress of AI. We will examine AI's advancements from the perspective of a biologist, comparing the evolution of biological systems with that of AI. By doing so, we can identify the potential and limitations of current AI algorithms and explore possible directions for the future of AI development. Here is the outline. First, we will explore the evolution of AI systems, from early rule-based approaches to modern machine learning systems. Next, we will dive into the factors driving the evolution of biological systems and compare their strengths and weaknesses with our current machine learning systems. Finally, by drawing connections between biology and AI, we will identify potential directions for future AI advancements. Here, we take a closer look at the progress of AI systems. In the early days, AI systems were predominantly learning systems built on human-crafted rules. An example of such a rule-based system is as follows. First, a set of facts is defined, like John is Dan's father, Paul is John's father, and Alice is Paul's wife. Next, a set of rules is established, such as the grandmother is the grandfather's wife, and the grandfather is the father's father. These facts and rules create the background knowledge for the system. Once this knowledge is in place, a logic programming query can be executed on the system. For instance, we can ask if Dan's grandmother is Alice. The reasoning engine processes this question using the defined facts and rules in the background knowledge. In this case, since John is Dan's father and Paul is John's father, Paul is Dan's grandfather. Then, as Alice is Paul's wife, Alice is Dan's grandmother. The system will return true to this query. Provided the knowledge base is correctly constructed, the strength of a rule-based system lies in its ability to produce precise reasoning results without error. However, there are several limitations to rule-based systems. First, they lack flexibility because they rely on manually crafted logic rules to function. This makes it difficult to describe certain types of knowledge, such as image or audio features. Second, rule-based systems cannot learn new knowledge independently. They are unable to extract features from images or audio and cannot automatically extend their knowledge base. As a result, building and maintaining a rule-based system involves high costs in knowledge engineering. This makes it challenging to apply these systems to real-world scenarios. For example, creating a knowledge base for apples would be difficult. Describing the image features of apples is complex, given their wide range of colors and appearances. Moreover, if a new variety of apple, like a blue one, is introduced, the system would struggle to update its database to account for the new color. This illustrates the challenges of using rule-based systems for real-world image recognition tasks. To address these issues, a more flexible learning algorithm capable of discovering new features was developed. In this learning system, humans are no longer required to manually create the background knowledge. Instead, a set of training instances is provided to the system. For example, to build a system that classifies apples and grapes, we would prepare a collection of apple images and a collection of grape images. These images are labeled as either apple or grape and cover various characteristics like color and shape for both fruits. The machine learning algorithm is then trained to develop a model that can distinguish between apples and grapes based on the features in the training data. Once training is complete, the model can accurately recognize new images with similar features, even if they weren't part of the training set. For instance, when presented with a new apple or grape image, the model can correctly classify whether it is an apple or a grape. While machine learning systems may make errors if the model learns incorrect features or the training data lacks sufficient coverage of the sample space, their flexibility enables them to be effectively deployed in real-world applications. Let's dive deeper into how machine learning works. First, input data is represented in an input space. This input space is a high-dimensional space. In the diagram, the arrows represent the axes of dimensions in the input space, while the colored dots represent input instances, such as images of apples or grapes, encoded within this space. For images, the input space consists of pixel values where each dimension corresponds to a specific pixel. However, in this input space is often challenging to separate instances belonging to different categories, as they tend to be mixed together. To address this, a feature extractor transforms the input space into a more structured feature space. In the feature space, instances from the same category become easier to separate. In the diagram, we can observe that instances from different categories have a clearer boundary. For example, in the feature space for classifying apples and grapes, instances with a single rounded shape, apples, are separated from those with multiple rounded shapes, grapes. With this transformation, a classifier can learn to draw boundaries that distinguish instances from different categories. Once the boundary is established, the classifier can categorize instances with unknown labels. In the diagram, the black dots labeled on 2 and 3 represent instances with unknown categories. After the boundaries are drawn, the classifier can infer that the first black dot belongs to the orange group, the second to the blue group, and so on. In older machine learning systems, computational resources were limited. As a result, the available resources were primarily used to train the classifier, meaning that only the classifier could be learned from data. The feature extractor, however, still required manually crafted rules, necessitating significant knowledge engineering efforts to customize it. This limitation constrained the applicability of traditional machine learning systems. However, with advancements in hardware, computational resources are now sufficient to support both feature extraction and classification. In deep learning applications, the feature extractor is learned directly from the training data, allowing it to adapt more effectively to the unique characteristics of the instances. These feature extractors, however, become the primary computational bottleneck, requiring significant resources for training and optimization. Here we provide an example of the types of features learned by deep learning. The example involves a convolutional neural network. In the input space, apples and grapes are mixed together, making it difficult to distinguish between them. They need to be mapped into a feature space that separates them clearly. In the feature space, the feature extractor transforms them into a representation where there is a distinct boundary between the two classes. To create this clear boundary, the deep learning network must learn a customized feature extractor tailored to the specific characteristics of the apples and grapes. In the lower layers, the network learns basic features such as lines and color patches. In the higher layers, these lines and patches combine to form more complex shapes like green triangles or red circles. With these features, apples can be distinguished by their single rounded shape, while grapes can be recognized by their multiple rounded shapes and leaves, which are characterized by several green triangles. These features are fine-tuned to optimize for the classification task, allowing deep learning models to be effectively applied to a wide range of real-world scenarios. The performance of deep learning models improves as the number of model parameters and training instances increases. Now, let's explain why larger models and more training instances outperform smaller models with fewer instances. We illustrate this through their feature spaces. The colored dots represent training instances, where different colors indicate different classes, and the black dots are test instances with unknown classes. The top row represents a scenario with many training instances, while the bottom row represents fewer training instances. Looking at the right column, we see that it's easier to determine the class of the black dots in the top row because there are more nearby training instances to provide context. The left column represents a small model, and the right column represents a large model. Since larger models can learn more features, the feature space has more dimensions. In the top row, we notice that with more features, it's easier to separate the training instances, making it simpler to classify the black dots. This explains why larger models and more training instances lead to better performance. They provide a richer feature space and more data for accurate classification. Since machine learning relies on large data sets and complex models to develop intelligence, one might ask if there are methods beyond machine learning and rule-based systems to create intelligence. Biological evolution may offer alternative approaches to generating intelligence. We can explore the differences between biological evolution and machine learning systems to find potential insights. The evolution of life has led to the emergence of diverse species on Earth, ranging from single-celled organisms to multicellular ones, such as plants and animals. However, the structures of all these organisms are built from the same basic building blocks, such as nucleotide bases and amino acids. This suggests that, in nature, there are forces driving simple molecules to assemble into more complex systems. The primary driving force behind the formation of these complex systems is survival and reproduction. If a more complex system has a survival advantage, it will reproduce more and continue evolving. Moreover, in the evolutionary world, how to survive is an open-ended question with no single best solution. A solution that works well in one environment might not be effective in another. For instance, some primitive humans had powerful jaw muscles, enabling them to break down more food and gain more nutrients. However, these strong muscles limited brain development, preventing them from developing better intelligence. Thus, in evolution, the solution space lacks a definitive ground truth, encouraging creativity and diverse adaptations to succeed. Consider the example of early fish. In ancient times, fish were jawless, no jawed species existed. Jawless fish, like lampreys, could only nibble small amounts of meat and couldn't consume larger prey. Now imagine the first jaw evolving. This adaptation allowed fish to crush the shells of other creatures, turning them into dominant predators. As a result, jawed fish outcompeted those without jaws, illustrating how evolution drives nature to create new components for survival. In contrast, for machine learning or deep learning systems, the objective is to fit the training data. To achieve generalization, we usually assume that the training samples and inference samples follow the same distribution. With this assumption, the trained model can make inferences on data from the same distribution as the inference samples. However, it can only produce outputs based on instances within the training distribution. Here's an example. A deep learning model trained to synthesize artwork in Van Gogh's style will, at inference time, only generate new artwork in Van Gogh's style. It cannot create artworks in other styles, like Picasso's, or invent entirely new styles on its own. On the contrary, human artists are not confined to the styles they have learned and can create entirely new styles different from existing ones. From the perspective of the evolution of life, we can observe the limitations of machine learning systems. To better understand the limitations of human engineering, let's compare birds to airplanes. First, consider energy efficiency. A pigeon can fly hundreds of miles without requiring additional supplies. However, human-made aircraft of similar size cannot cover such long distances without refueling. Second, look at flexibility. An eagle can take off from almost anywhere, has exceptional maneuverability in flight, and can engage in aerial combat with other birds. In contrast, airplanes cannot take off from just anywhere, and while helicopters can take off from confined spaces, they cannot engage in mid-air dogfights, like birds. Third, consider noise. Most birds, especially owls, fly silently, whereas every human-made aircraft generates significant noise during flight. Thus, while airplanes can fly higher, faster, and carry heavier loads, they still fall short in many respects when compared to birds. In machine learning, similar shortcomings exist when compared to the human brain. First, machine learning algorithms are highly energy inefficient. Training large models with numerous parameters requires multiple iterations of parameter updates, leading to significant energy consumption. In contrast, the human brain consumes far less energy while learning new knowledge and skills. Second, training a machine learning model demands vast datasets with a large number of examples. However, humans can learn efficiently from far fewer examples. Finally, machine learning models are confined to the training distribution, lacking creativity. In contrast, humans possess the creativity to generate entirely new ideas. By comparing machine learning algorithms with the human brain, we can better understand the limitations of current machine learning technology. In comparison to the evolution of biological systems, we find that human-engineered systems still lag in many areas. After recognizing the limitations of machine learning, it's crucial to explore future directions beyond relying on larger models and more training data to address the challenges we face. Let's begin by examining the progress of airplane engineering. The airplane was invented 120 years ago. With advancements in more powerful engines and stronger, lighter materials, airplanes can now fly higher and faster. However, most innovations in aviation stem from advancements in engines and materials. Due to the limitations of human engineering, the basic wing architecture of airplanes has seen little significant change over the past century. There have been few fundamental innovations in this area. As a result, airplanes still cannot fly like birds, which can take off without a runway. The advancements in machine learning have followed a similar path. Backpropagation for training neural networks was introduced in 1975. The advancements in neural networks have enabled the success of many applications, including GPT-4. The progress in neural networks has largely come from training on larger models and datasets. Thus, most innovations in AI have been driven by faster computational speeds, which involve improvements in hardware, optimization methods, and various other aspects. However, there have been few fundamental innovations that change how neural networks are trained, as backpropagation has remained mostly unchanged for many years. There is a question: if we use more data to train larger models, is it possible to develop a robot with creativity and emotion? The answer is no. Training larger models with more data may improve the model's ability to answer more complex questions accurately. However, for questions without a defined ground truth, the model still cannot generate truly innovative solutions. The reason is that machine learning algorithms train neural networks to fit the training data, limiting them to patterns within the data set. Therefore, it is impossible to create a deep learning model with creativity and emotion or other human-like traits such as self-consciousness. Let's dive into the fundamental architecture of neural networks. While artificial neural networks appear to mimic the neurons in the human brain, there are key fundamental differences. First, artificial neural networks are trained using backpropagation, where a single loss function guides the adjustments of weights and biases. In contrast, biological systems are not optimized based on a single objective. Instead, intricate electrical and chemical signals regulate neural activity in complex ways. Second, artificial neural networks operate as synchronous circuits, with discrete timestamps for each calculation. Biological neurons, however, function asynchronously and flexibly process signals on a continuous timescale. To create an artificial system that truly simulates biological neurons, many engineering challenges still need to be addressed. Here we summarize the way to build machine intelligence. First, the rule-based system created at early days could conduct precise reasoning. However, huge knowledge engineering effort make it not feasible to be applied in the real world. Machine learning system could be adopted to real world. Whereas machine learning system lacks creativity and require huge energy consumption. Biological system possess more creative and innovation potential. However, there it is still many engineering challenges need to be overcome. Other than these systems, there is still other possible approaches to be proposed to develop machine intelligence. Most important of all, although the success of machine learning, we should not take it as the only way to build the artificial intelligence in the future. Although with increase of computational power, training larger model and larger datasets still could improve machine learning system in the future. However, it still have many fundamental limitations which could not be overcome just by larger model and larger data sets. Thanks for your listening.